If there's one plant you actually don't need to know how to grow, it would be mint, because this stuff pretty much grows itself, and that is part of the problem. So this video is all about how to grow great mint in containers, how to control it, propagate it, and what to avoid. And then at the very end, because you're gonna get so much mint, we'll throw in a little bonus tip on what to do with all of it. My favorite thing about growing mint is the sheer amount of varieties that are available to you. Right here, I have some really fun ones. So this is pineapple mint, which doesn't really look like a pineapple, but it really does smell like a pineapple. So I'd recommend this one. But if you want to go down the more classic route, I've got spearmint right here. I've got a classic peppermint over here. This is mojito mint. Clearly you know what you're supposed to be using that one for. Then I have a bigger spearmint here, but then it gets a little bit fruity. You have orange mint. I think there's a lemon mint, there's a chocolate mint, and there's even a banana mint. And all of them do have a little bit of that reminiscent smell of the fruit that they are named after. So have some fun with it. Experiment with varieties, because they're all gonna be growing in the same way. And that way is a container. I like a black plastic pot. Terracotta, not my favorite for mint. Why? Because when I take this sweet pear mint, one that I actually have never grown before, does not smell like pear though. So this one might be misnamed. It just has a lot of roots, right? Tons of roots, and there's also a ton of rhizomes, or what are underground stems, that will spread through the soil. That's why it's really not a good idea to plant this in the ground. So I like a black plastic pot or something more solid, because I don't want the soil to dry out. That's one of the few things you can do wrong with mint. So I'm just gonna go in with a very standard potting mix here, and then you gotta analyze your mint. This one's actually in a pretty good spot. A lot of the times you'll see mint roots just in the shape of the pot because they spread so vigorously, but you can be very, very rough with mint as you're potting it up. So I'm just gonna loosen this up, pop it down in, right in the center here, and then I'll backfill with more soil. So now I'm in, and I wanna hit it with a little bit of water, but it's also a good time to shape your mint, because it will grow like crazy. And this is kind of growing straight up. I want it to be more of a bush. So at this point, you could just leave it, which is totally fine, but I'm gonna do a couple pruning cuts. So the first one I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring this stem down to here. So what you'll notice is I cut right above a branching point. So these are gonna bush out this way, which is really great. I'm gonna basically repeat that for all these main stems. And of course I can use this mint. We'll show you what to do with that at the end of the video. This just is gonna give me a little bit better structure on this mint as it grows up. So you'll be surprised. Now I'm forcing the height down, and I'm forcing it to come out at more of a 45-degree angle from each of those cut points. So I'm gonna see this start to go more globe shape. Now that your mint's in a container, you just have to let it grow, and you won't have to wait too long. As long as you keep it well watered, put it in some decent light, it's gonna blow up, and eventually it will look something like this one right here. And you're gonna wonder, what am I supposed to do to control this? So I'm gonna show you two different methods. The first one is if you don't wanna repot your mint, I'll just show you how to prune this down and reshape it and give it a little bit more breathing room. And if you do wanna repot or divide your mint, I'll do that right after. So the first thing I'm going to do with a mint that is this large is I'm taking off anything that is dead, and I'm taking that off all the way down to the base. So something like this here, there's a little bit of growth, but it's not enough to write home about, so I'm gonna be removing that. So I could keep going here, but this is just a nice little light haircut that gives you a little more life on your mint, and you could keep growing this for a bit longer, but you'll probably run into a situation, which to me, this mint container is at, where I bet if I open it up, and it does. So you see the roots, these are the thin guys here, but there's also those things I mentioned, those rhizomes or underground stems. They're creeping through, throwing out roots on every single part of themselves, and they're trying to find a new place to colonize. And that's why you grow it in a container, because just one of these, like I'm actually gonna rip this out and show you, just this guy right here, this little chunk, even as it stands right now, if I were to throw this in the soil, mint would be coming up like crazy, because every single one of these little nodes on this rhizome, like right there, 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 all of those could turn into new mint plants if given the opportunity. So we're gonna reset this, and we'll show you how to bring a crazy container like this back to that nice lush mint bush that we started with. For the first part of mint reset, you gotta have some sort of cutting implement, and then you gotta pop it out of its pot, and you're going to do the unthinkable, which is just come in and chop the bottom third or so of the plant off underground. So I'm gonna come in, I'm just getting very aggressive. I can hear those roots splitting. It's not a big deal. So now that our little mint pancake has been cut, it's time to divide, because if I was to put this into a new pot at the same size, it just really wouldn't work out that well. So I wanna go ahead and chunk out what I think is a good size. So I'm gonna come straight through the middle. It feels like you're committing a crime to your plants, but trust me, if anything can handle it, it is mint. So this is where it gets fun. You just get to restart the life cycle. So back into the same pot that we just put it in, we'll add some soil. So what we're gonna do now is take one of the clumps and pop it back into the pot at surface level, roughly centered. And it's gonna look really bad for a second, but we'll fix it. So you could leave it like this, but I gotta be honest, it looks a little bit bad. But the way to reset it is to cut these stems down, much like we did our first example when we were potting up mint for the first time. Just come in like this, trim it all down, and you'll be surprised at how quickly this resets itself. Just cut right above growth nodes, and you'll see new growth come out in no time. It might seem counterintuitive to cut this low on the stem, but if you look very closely, you can still see the little marks where new leaves will come out of. And much like you cut right above a growth node when you can see the leaves, you do the exact same thing when you can't, because there will be tiny little shoots coming out in no time. So there is our sad, but eventually happy looking, repotted, reset mint. But now you've got all this mint that you divided that I'm assuming, since you already had too much, you're gonna need to figure out what to do with. And for that, we have a really cool, fast, easy recipe to turn all of this into a mint extract.
Hey friends, most of us probably know that mint can help you out when you have a stomach ache, but it's also an antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, anti-diabetic. It can freshen your breath and makes an amazing pest deterrent in and around your home. We plant up mint around our deck all summer long to keep bugs away, and it's also awesome to keep pests out of your chicken coop. There's more to do with mint than just tea, and today I'm going to show you how you can make your own mint extract. Make sure you harvest your mint first thing in the morning, right after the dew dries. The oils are the most volatile at that point, so you're going to get the best flavor. Here's what you're going to need. Fresh or dried mint. I used fresh and dried for this recipe. It doesn't really matter. You're going to need a funnel, a cheesecloth, a muddler or some sort of wooden spoon, a glass jar with a well-fitting lid, some mid-range vodka, and then I like using a Pyrex measuring cup. You're going to want to make sure that your glass jar is clean and dry before you're adding your leaves in. And then you're going to just rip the leaves off of the stem. You're going to avoid the stem and kind of crush or bruise the leaves a little bit while you're tearing them. And you're doing that because you want to release as much of the oil as possible. You can see here that I'm adding dry and fresh mint, like I mentioned earlier. It doesn't really affect the taste much, and because we're using alcohol to macerate this, it's pretty safe for developing mold or bacteria. Usually when I make infusions of any sort, I use dried organics, but when I'm using alcohol, I mix it up, do both, and it doesn't seem to affect the quality of it. Once you have all of your leaves in the jar, you're going to want to take a wooden spoon or a muddler and just start crushing those leaves up. Now we're going to add vodka to this, and as I mentioned, you just need a mid-range, nothing fancy vodka, and you're going to want to fill all the way up to the brim. Again, make sure that your leaves are completely submerged. Now you're going to want to add a small square of parchment over your jar, and then give your jar a little bit of a shake, tilt it around, get everything nice and saturated with the vodka, and then you're going to let it sit for 30 days in a place that is out of sunlight and is dry and cool. After you've waited 30 days, you're going to want to grab your measuring cup and a funnel and a cheesecloth, and we're going to strain out the organics. This is going to be a very unceremonious straining of the liquid and the organics, but you're just going to use that cheesecloth. You're going to give it a little bit of a squeeze, and then you are ready to roll. I used an 18-ounce glass jar, and it yielded just over 16 ounces of a finished liquid. I like grabbing different size jars with a good plastic lid. When I'm storing this will store for about a year in a pantry. You don't have to refrigerate it. And that's it. Now you've made your own mint extract. Pretty cool to use something that you're growing in the garden that grows prolifically for something that you may not have thought of using it for. So until next time.